Hey guys, Time Itself here. In this video we're going to talk about shotguns. The different shotguns and their attachments, like the chokes especially. Like any battlefield weapon category, there are a lot of guns and a lot of options. There are already a dozen shotguns in the game when you count the primaries, the secondary, and then the gadget shotguns. And then on top of that you've got the optics, the barrels, the shells, the accessories, and so on. The number of possibilities is pretty impressive. But there's usually a pattern to things, so I'm going to try to generalize. However, DICE doesn't program a specific modifier most of the time, and so things might be different. I could make some minor mistakes, and DICE could always go back and change stuff. We already see some problems that they're probably going to fix, but we'll just have to see how things go. So settle in, and let's talk about shotguns. First, I need to give a big thanks to Simthic.com for the weapon stats. Link in description. Let's go ahead and talk about damage. Ignoring the discussion of the per pellet damage, I'm just going to look at the total damage the shotguns put out. First up is Buckshot, and leading the pack are the Hawk 12 and the 870 MCS. Then the Spaz 12, followed by the UTS, and those are all pump action shotguns. Then we've got the semi-autos, first the QBS, and followed by, well, everything else, the Dow 12 DBV, 1014, and Saiga. And of course the Shorty has the lowest damage. The damage starts off fairly high, starts to drop at 16 meters, and finishes dropping at 30 meters. As far as Flechette goes, it's largely the same, but the Hawk 12 has a bit more damage than the 870, the Dow 12 is bugged to have the same damage as the 870, and the UTS doesn't have quite the advantage over the QBS that it did with Buckshot. I have to say that coming from Call of Duty, these numbers are low. Typically in close range combat, Call of Duty shotguns will do more than 300 damage, with the expectation that if you can get reasonably close to your target in, again, close range, that you'll get that one-shot kill. Maybe it'll take two. In Battlefield, the close range damage is lower, but the Buckshot, the Flechette darts, they keep their damage better over longer ranges. But that brings up the question, how accurate are the shotguns and how likely are you to get a kill? I should take this opportunity to point out that the spread is distributed uniformly along the radius, so it's concentrated towards the center of the spread. That way, the more accurate you are, even if it's the guys just in the spread, being more accurate still rewards you with being more likely to get pellets to hit. So now we have to talk about spread. First up, let's just talk about the ADS spread, where all we have to worry about are the shotgun, the choke, and the ammo. I need to give a huge thanks to Zormao over on the Simthic.com forums for testing and compiling a list of these spreads. This is a lot of work and it's really helpful. There's a link in the description. A couple things need to be noted. These are the results of in-game tests, just shooting at a wall and then measuring how far apart the pellets are. And so there could be some error in here, but it's going to be generally useful for making comparisons. First thing that's surprising about this, there's a lot of variety. Second thing, the Dow 12, really tight spread. That's probably another bug with it. Third, these represent the whole diameter of the spread, not just the radius like most everything else is. So if they seem a little large, that's why. Pump actions tend to have tighter spreads than the semi-autos, and Flechette tends to have tighter spread than the Buckshot. Okay, we need some way to make use of both the damage output and the spread at the same time. So I guess what we call this is relative damage density. Higher numbers indicate denser damage. For accurately aimed shots, that's a good thing. And so the pump actions with tighter spreads and more damage clearly lead here. And then there's the Dow 12, obviously, clearly not in the right place. And then you've got the semi-autos coming in behind that. The Saiga 12K looks really good on this comparison. And then you've got the secondary, the Shorty, which just behind some of the pump actions, but still ahead of the semi-autos. But leading the pack here is the Spaz 12, just the default Buckshot. So I decided to give the Spaz 12 a try and see what I could do. Just stock, no attachments, regular old Buckshot, and I was woefully unimpressed. I don't know if there's something else going on, if I'm doing something wrong, but it was not at all surprising to take 2 or 3 hits to kill a guy. That was only a 48 kill assist right there. 2 or 3 hits to kill a guy that I thought, I'd probably have a pretty good chance of getting this guy in one hit. No. Sometimes the guy might have been hurt, sometimes I might have gotten lucky with a pellet spread, but by far, the gun was just too inconsistent for my taste. I can identify one thing that might be hurting me, but I have no way to confirm it in those clips, even when the guy kills me and I can see part of his loadout, and that is that the defensive spec provides a significant damage reduction against Buckshot. It's a 0.67 multiplier, whereas normally it would just be a 0.93. It's a massive reduction for the buckshot damage. Flechette, on the other hand, has no damage reduction, and the effect basically is that the defensive spec brings buckshot down at close range to the same damage as Flechette. However, that is only for the upper chest. So clearly we want to consider tightening that spread up with some of the choke options that they introduced in Battlefield 4 with the modified and full chokes. Where my shotgun probability series in Call of Duty actually calculated out the probability of getting a kill with a perfectly aimed shot at a given distance with a gun after so many shots, I'm going to have to do something else for Battlefield. It gets really complicated really fast, and I don't want to have to go back to try to figure out exactly how big those player hitboxes are. It's just way too much testing. It's not worth it, so we're going to have to do something else here. And then I remember a question a viewer had some 6 months ago. Triple Lane asked, in a region where you have almost 100% chance of getting the kill for that perfectly aimed shot, what happens when you're only partly aimed and only half the crosshairs are over the guy? What's the probability at that point? And actually this makes our problem much, much easier because the probability of an individual pellet hitting at that point is just 50%. It doesn't matter how big the spread is, at that point the probability is the same, so we can use this as something of a comparison tool for close range. If in that scenario you had a very open choke, but were still likely to get the kill, that would probably be okay because you could afford to be inaccurate. You were doing enough damage close enough that not having a tight spread was okay. However, on the other hand, you weren't very likely to get a kill, you'd probably need better aim, and therefore would probably also benefit from a tighter choke. The benefit of having an open choke is that you're likely to hit at least something. So in this specific scenario, our heavy-hitting shotguns, the Hawk and the 870, have about a 60% chance of getting a kill in that first shot. And then it's well over 99% for the second shot. So the question is, do you want one-hit kills with those shotguns? If you do, take the choke as tight as you can. That does have downsides for hipfire, but we'll talk about that in a bit. For the common low-damage shotguns, the DBV 1014 Saiga, and that 50-50 chance of an individual pellet hitting, they have about a 25% chance of getting a kill on the first shot, but a 95% chance on the second shot. So that says by that criteria, you're probably okay with the default choke, but those have wider chokes to start with, and so if you start trying to push it out to further ranges, then you might want a tighter choke on those anyway. The two barrel or choke options for reducing spread are the modified and full choke. The modified has a spread multiplier of 0.8, the full choke a modifier of 0.6. On that relative damage density graph, that would be an increase of about 25% for the modified or about 67% for the full choke. The downside of those is an increased hipfire deviation. Battlefield has separate variables for the inaccuracy due to your soldier not aiming his gun where you think he is, and inaccuracies due to the pellets just going everywhere, and they're independent. When you aim down sights, you mostly eliminate your soldier's inaccuracy, and then you're just left with the pellet spread. But this is kind of a tricky value for Battlefield. There are already 10 values for bullet deviation, and then there's a linear interpolation between those, and they depend on stance and movement speed. So, if I found the right values in the data browser, this is how I would summarize it. For standing still and hip firing, there is a penalty of a 50% increase to the bullet deviation, both from the modified and full choke. However, when you go to crouching or prone, the modified choke, that goes down to 25%. But of course that is meaningless if you don't know what the base values are. It's 1.5 for standing from the hip and 1 for crouching and prone. Now those are degrees along the radius, so you would have to double it to make a direct comparison to the spread values we had earlier for the Kona spread when ADS. For a Spaz 12 with a full choke using Buckshot, that means you could have more than twice the pellet spread due to the deviation where the gun is pointed than due to the spread of the pellets. Now you can mitigate the effect somewhat by using the laser sight attachments. There's a 0.75 multiplier if I'm not mistaken. But even without a modified or full choke, I would still avoid hip firing. There's simply too much inaccuracy there. That seems kind of counterintuitive if you're coming from Call of Duty, or heck, even Halo, but there's just, unless you're right up in the guy's face, go ahead and aim down sights because it's going to help you a whole lot. Also, playing on the 360, I feel like the movement is clunky and slow and imprecise, and I need to aim down sights to get that extra precision in order to land the shot. Just hip firing, not accurate enough. So let's talk about some of the consequences of that. Normally I think of a shotgun as a run-up, get in your face, just hip fire, spray them down. And that doesn't seem to work as well in Battlefield, again, because I don't feel like I can hip fire. I can't run around, turn 20-30 degrees, and land a shot accurately. No, I need to be right there and aim down sights whenever possible. And because of the fairly low damage output, needing multiple shots to kill, and then needing to reload because of that, I find that I need to avoid large groups of enemies. I need to engage enemies one at a time, preferably when they're not looking at me. That can be really hard to do when you're firing an unsuppressed shotgun showing up on the mini-map all the time. Another issue I run into while shotgunning is that I tend to take a fair amount of damage in just about every firefight. They manage to return fire and I get hurt. And so I like to run medic, drop a medic bag at my feet after I kill a guy, try to move around a little bit so they don't know right where I am. But otherwise, I need to be trying to heal up. Otherwise, just the game slows down way too much as I wait to find someone else's medic bag or just wait for my health to come back. For example, I just took 85 damage right there. Yeah, so when I'm running around with a shotgun, I feel like I am showing off. And by these clips, you're thinking, this is showing off? Your aim is terrible. And yeah, I agree, this is really tricky. Battlefield does not make running around with a shotgun easy. And so it's not even so much that I'm doing great, it doesn't look great on my part, it's just that, well, the people I'm playing against, they're not so good, and so I'm just kind of showing off to them at this point. Let's spend just a moment talking about the Duckbill, the choke modifier essentially. Multiple of 0.4 for the vertical spread and 1.5 for the horizontal spread. As a concept, I really like this. It gives you a way to spread out the pellets without suddenly missing lots of shots necessarily over a guy's shoulder, or if he's behind cover, you're still likely to hit at least a reasonable portion of your shots, even though they're spread out quite a bit. However, I've already said I just don't think there's enough damage density in your normal shotgun spread, and the Duckbill doesn't help that at all. So while it might be great on, well, maybe the semi-autos, it works out okay, I don't know. Just in general, if you had a tighter choke and were ADS, you would be better off with that as compared to the Duckbill. I'd seen some people note that you could go for headshots, but there's no extra headshot multiplier on the shotguns, so that doesn't make sense at all. If you're well aimed, aim down sights, you'd hit more shots with another choke, except if the guy's prone, in which case the Duckbill is an excellent choice for killing those prone guys. But otherwise, aim down sights and use a tighter choke. Maybe it can be fun with semi-auto and just spam shots everywhere, but I mean that's kind of silly at that point. It can be fun though, right? But until they make a Duckbill that goes vertical, and yes, you can use the cantered iron sights with the Duckbill to do some funny stuff, or your aim is just so terrible that you need that slight chance to hit on the outside, but you're willing to waste a couple pellets that might go there that you really need in order to guarantee kills normally, yeah, the Duckbill's not going to be a thing. The tactic that seemed to work the best for me was, instead of playing it like I would a shotgun Call of Duty, even just going after outliers, people who weren't with a group of people, and just get one at a time, instead I went more for, well, I guess was kind of like what I was trying to do when I was going for aggressive recon and quickscoping. Just aim down sights real fast to try and get a one, maybe two shot kill, go fall back on the secondary pistol a lot. The shotguns do have some range. You get a tight choke on there, you know, some Flechette, a full choke on one of the pump actions, and it's got a bit of reach. It might take 2 or 3 shots, but the guy will you probably manage to get a couple kills here and there. I don't know, I managed to make it work. I guess for conclusions, I'd have to say I don't entirely understand the role of some of the shotguns, just because I feel like you need as much damage density as possible, just because the shotguns don't put out enough damage unless you're just point blank for it to work out very well. Just looking at those numbers, the Saiga seems to be better than the 1014 or the DBV. If on the other hand you want a spray and pray shotgun, then go for the QBS. Fine, just unload the entire magazine, then go sit in a corner and reload. But otherwise, if you want to increase the odds of your getting a kill with the first couple shots, then you're gonna need to get a full choke on that shotgun and aim down sights. That's about all the directly Battlefield related stuff I have. I was going to ramble on about some of the tricky parts of doing this, so stick around if that's interesting. I obviously was not going to come up with hitboxes, especially given the different multiples on the different limbs. That was going to be quite a pain, And so I was looking at different ways to do this. I first thought about some analytical methods to do some of the probability stuff, but the things aren't independent, and I did not get that far in my stats class. Otherwise, I would have been doing a bunch of numeric stuff, and well, that still would have been a pain, and I just could not justify it. It didn't seem worth it. And then when you look at it and you're like, oh, you actually don't want to aim down sights. Why would I want to bother spending hours on the math doing all that? Because I'm just going to recommend you avoid it anyway. I mean, it's something like a change of variables. You start with law of cosines, and you started looking at what the Jacobian would be to do that, and realized, oh wait, yeah, the variables aren't independent. Why am I even bothering with this? So yeah, that's why you didn't get more hardcore math stuff behind it, and we just kind of went for the generalities. Still, I think it was fairly useful to be able to say some of that stuff and just yeah. Anyway, I said it all already. Anyway, thanks for sticking around, guys, and I will catch you next time.